The signal arrived as Dr. Eliza Kesper slept, piercing through 17 layers of security and jolting her neural implant with an urgency she hadn't felt in decades. She gasped, awake, her bedroom's environmental system responding to her elevated heart rate by lowering the temperature 2 degrees. The clock read 3:17 a.m., Earth Standard Time, a measurement that had become increasingly irrelevant since humanity had scattered across 12 star systems. Origin? She demanded, swinging her legs over the bed's edge. Signal trace indicates Saturn's Mnemosyne station, her AI assistant replied. Last known active repository in the outer system. Authentication markers intact. Priority Alpha. Eliza's hands trembled. Mnemosyne shouldn't be communicating with anyone. The station had been officially decommissioned 15 years ago, after the data collapse. Only she and 3 others knew it still functioned as the final backup of humanity's pre-war cultural archive. And now, all 3 of those others were dead. Display, she commanded, and the wall before her transformed into a scrolling cascade of corrupted code. Buried within the digital noise was a simple message, one that made her blood freeze. Integrity failing, 97.3% of archives compromised. Coordinate sequence follows. Come alone. 12 hours later, Eliza stood in the director's office at the New Earth Historical Commission. Her expression carefully neutral as Director Kazan studied the single-page proposal she'd fabricated overnight. Personal research expedition. His eyebrows arched with practiced skepticism. To the outer system. The Council hasn't approved civilian travel beyond Mars since the treaty. My work on pre-collapse literature requires primary sources, she replied smoothly. I've arranged private funding. The lie tasted metallic on her tongue. Kazan's cybernetic eye whirred as it adjusted focus. Your timing is curious, Dr. Kesper. The Preservation Committee votes tomorrow on resource allocation. Your voice has been influential. They both knew what remained unspoken. The commission was split between those who believed humanity's past deserved preservation and those who argued that limited resources should focus exclusively on the future. I've submitted my proxy vote, Eliza said. My research can't wait. What she couldn't tell him was that according to her calculations, humanity had approximately 9 days before the last complete repository of human knowledge, art, and history disintegrated into digital dust. The backup system, 17 billion terabytes of quantum encrypted data, literature, music, scientific knowledge, historical records. Everything from Shakespeare to the complete genetic library of old Earth's biosphere. All of it stored on systems never designed to function this long without maintenance. And Eliza was the only person alive who knew how to access it. The transit vessel Hoshimaru was the fastest transport Eliza could secure without raising official alarms. A retrofitted cargo hauler with minimal crew and questionable registration. The captain, a woman named Cirrus with intricate circuitry tattoos crawling up her neck, had asked remarkably few questions when Eliza transferred the exorbitant payment. Saturn's a dead zone, was all Cirrus had said, her dark eyes revealing nothing. Hope whatever you're chasing is worth the radiation exposure. 5 days into the journey, as they passed the asteroid belt, Eliza's neural implant detected an unauthorized scan probing the ship's systems. She found Cirrus in the galley, calmly drinking synthetic coffee. Someone's accessing our navigation logs, Eliza said, not bothering with pleasantries. Cirrus didn't flinch. Transport control does random sweeps, nothing unusual, not from that vector, Eliza countered. That's coming from a hegemony vessel. The cup stopped halfway to Cirrus's mouth. You said this was a research expedition. It is. Then why would a military cruiser be tracking us? There was something new in Cirrus's expression, not fear but calculation. Eliza made a decision. Because what I'm researching could change the balance of power. Someone doesn't want us to reach Mnemosyne. Mnemosyne station was decommissioned after the Cirrus's eyes widened with realization. It's still operational, isn't it? The memory banks survived. Meant to get there in under 4 days, Eliza said, ignoring the question. Can this ship move any faster? Cirrus set down her cup, not without attracting more attention. But I know a way around the hegemony's patrol routes. It'll cost you another 20%. Done. And, Cirrus added, I want to know what we're really salvaging. Eliza met her gaze steadily. Everything. Mnemosyne station hung in Saturn's shadow, a dark cylinder against the planet's luminous rings. As they approached, Eliza saw why the automated distress signal had triggered. The station's exterior was pitted with micrometeor impacts. and one entire section had been sheared away, exposing internal structures to vacuum. Life support's minimal, Cirrus reported from the pilot's console. Concentrated in the central hub, power fluctuations everywhere else. Eliza nodded, checking the specialized equipment she'd brought. The data extraction matrix was intact, but she'd need to reach the primary core, assuming it still existed. "I'm going alone," she said, securing her helmet. "Like hell," Cirrus replied, standing. "My ship, my rules, we go together." Eliza didn't have time to argue. The station's rotation was degrading in hours, maybe minutes. The gravitational stresses would tear apart what remained of the structure. They docked at an emergency airlock, the magnetic seal barely engaging. Inside, emergency lighting cast long red shadows down corridors that hadn't seen human presence in over a decade. Their footsteps echoed hollowly as they made their way toward the central core. "Why didn't they evacuate the archives during the collapse?" Cirrus asked, her voice tight in the helmet communicator. "Politics," Eliza replied bitterly. The Neo-Luddite faction saw the collapse as an opportunity. Destroy the records, destroy the past, make humanity start fresh. Some fresh start. Half the colonies can barely maintain their environmental systems. Exactly. We lost too much, too quickly. They reached a massive circular door, its locking mechanism dark. Eliza placed her palm against the center panel. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, ancient recognition software activated, scanning through her glove. Identity confirmed, Dr. Eliza Kesper, Archive Custodian Alpha. Warning, system integrity critical. Backup protocols engaged. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a vast spherical chamber. At its center floated what appeared to be a crystalline structure the size of a small house. Facets glinting with internal light. The data core. "My God," Cirrus whispered, "I've never seen technology like this." "Quantum crystal lattice," Eliza explained, her voice reverent. "Self-maintaining, self-correcting, designed to last centuries." She moved toward a control console, but even it has limits. As she worked, Cirrus circled the chamber, her helmet lights playing over abandoned workstations. "Eliza," she called suddenly, her voice sharp, "we have company." 3 figures in unmarked environmental suits stood in the doorway, weapons ready. "Step away from the console, Dr. Kesper," the central figure commanded, voice distorted through external speakers. Eliza's fingers continued to fly across the interface. "I know who sent you," she said. "The Council believes humanity should focus on the future, not preserve its past. They're wrong. The resources required to maintain these archives could support 2 colony worlds," the figure replied. "The Council made its decision. A decision based on incomplete information," Eliza countered. She nodded toward the crystal lattice. "This isn't just our past, it's the key to our future." The data extraction sequence was at 60%. She needed to keep them talking. "What do you mean?" the figure demanded. "The archives contain the accumulated scientific knowledge of pre-collapse civilization," Eliza explained, "including terraforming technologies we've lost, medical advances, sustainable energy solutions. Do you know why the colonies are failing? Because we're reinventing what we once knew." The armed figures exchanged glances. Eliza pressed her advantage. "You've been told you're protecting humanity's future, but without our past, we have no future." Suddenly the station shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared as the gravitational stabilizers failed. "Station structural integrity compromised," the automated system announced. "Catastrophic failure imminent. Emergency evacuation protocols initiated." The armed figures backed toward the exit. "This facility is lost," their leader shouted. "Come with us now or be destroyed with it." Eliza checked the console. Extraction at 88%. "Not enough. You go," she told Cirrus. "Get to the ship." "And leave you?" Cirrus grabbed her arm. "Not happening." Another violent tremor shook the station. A support beam crashed down meters from where they stood. 92%, Eliza muttered, watching the progress indicator. So close. The armed figures had vanished, presumably racing for their own vessel. Cirrus pulled insistently at Eliza's arm. "We have maybe 3 minutes before this whole section depressurizes," she warned. Eliza made a decision. She unclipped a data module from her belt and inserted it into the console. "What are you doing?" Cirrus demanded. "Plan B." Eliza's fingers danced across the controls, initiating a new sequence. "We can't save the whole archive. but I can extract the index and access protocols. Meaning what exactly? Meaning, Eliza said, yanking the now filled module free as another explosion rocked the station. That we can rebuild. The archive created distributed backups across multiple systems, fragments, incomplete, but with this, she held up the module, we can find them, reassemble what was lost. They ran for the docking bay as the station began to break apart around them. Gravity fluctuated wildly. One moment they were bounding in near weightlessness, the next slammed to the floor as compensators overcompensated. They reached the Hoshimuru just as the airlock corridor began to twist from structural stresses. Once inside, Saris flung herself into the pilot's seat and disengaged docking clamps. The ship lurched free as a section of the station's hull peeled away behind them. From a safe distance they watched Minimus station's death throes. The structure collapsed in on itself, a silent implosion in the vacuum of space. Fragments spinning out to join Saturn's countless rings. Was it worth it? Saris asked quietly. What you recovered? Eliza stared at the small data module in her palm. This contains the locations of 17 distributed archive fragments, scattered across settled space, each one incomplete, but together they form the full repository. Saris finished. She studied Eliza's face. That's not a research project, that's a crusade. Knowledge shouldn't be a luxury, Eliza replied, or a political tool. It belongs to everyone. Saris was silent for a long moment. Finally she said, my ship's vast, unregistered, hard to track. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. And I've always wanted to see more of the settled worlds. Eliza looked up, surprised. You'd help me? It could take years. I was getting bored with cargo runs anyway. Saris tapped the navigation console. So where to first? Eliza inserted the data module into her scanner. 17 points of light appeared on the galactic display, scattered like stars. Europa, she decided, pointing to the nearest glowing marker. We start there. As the Hoshimuru set course for Jupiter's ice-covered moon, Eliza felt something she hadn't experienced since before the collapse. Hope. In her quarters that night, Eliza activated the small holographic projectors she kept among her few personal possessions. The image that flickered to life showed a smiling older man standing before an ancient library's towering shelves. We were right, Marcus, she told the image of her long-dead mentor. The knowledge survived. She placed the data module beside the projector. These two small objects now containing the fragile thread of humanity's collective memory. And this time, she promised, we'll make sure it isn't forgotten.